ask a question about expireds,
Okay.
because I'm intrigued, and Nikki actually had made a comment that she built her business on it. So I was looking in Remind, one of those systems, to pull up some expireds, and there's a very big range. Expireds from over a year ago, things like that. Do you recommend any like time period to focus on? If they're not in the last 3 to 6 months, is that too far expired?
Here in Orange County, a few years ago, I did a self-funded study. And what we did is we looked at all the expired properties that expired in the prior 2 years. Can't remember that ends up coming that 70% of all expireds ended up selling within a 2-year time period. So new expireds are extremely competitive because everyone, their cousin, their dog, their team, everybody's calling before 8 o'clock. It's not even legal to call before 8 o'clock in most areas, but they call like at 7:59, playing on that, the time. But you still get it because the person who runs the marathon is typically going to win. I always found that I need to have at least 8 contacts. I need to follow up 8 times. And there's that thing there's that rule in marketing that you have to follow. Someone has to see your name 8 times for them to even remember who you are. What I find with expireds is that most agents are being taught for let it ring 3 times, move on to the next one. Let it ring 3 times, move on to the next one. I teach that let it ring, leave the voicemail, then follow up on the voicemail, and then send something of value. But going back to your answer, I started my business on expireds, and then I went into defaults, and then I did expireds and defaults. And even to this day, that still works because these are people who are, number one, they're unhappy with their agent. And number two, they listed their price for too much money, probably a little bit of both. So if you go back to the older expireds, first, you're going to want to make sure it hasn't sold yet. So you're going to have to do some data mining. Second, you're going to have to figure out their contact information, which typically you can get from like Black Knight or Vulcan 7, whatnot. It's usually around, property radar. Again, that's not an endorsement, but it's like 7 cents per number or something like that. So it's not hard to get that information, but you have to first make sure it's not sold and then follow up with them and practice your talk track, right? Practice. The reason I'm calling is because, hey, you listed your home. It didn't sell a few years ago. I didn't know if you knew what was going on with the market. And I want to see, there's still a window of opportunity to get a home sold for X amount of dollars. Would you be willing to do that? Now, that's just if you're going to go cold. What I would encourage you to do is put together a nice business letter and send it to them, and then follow up with them about 5 days later with phone call. Because if you remember what I talked about on the anatomy of a cold call, you can use a letter that introduces who you are and where you're from and what you want. Now you just need to follow up to see if they need what you're providing. So you can do a business letter. You could send your pre-meeting packet in addition to that, and then follow up with them. Worst thing is that maybe they don't want to sell. No big deal. Your letter could also contain, hey, join my free micro market report newsletter. So now they're growing your database. Now they're opting into the stuff that you're sending. But the key is that there's no right, wrong, and reason. We focus on people who we know own a home. We know they live in our market area. Expireds are great because now we know at one time they wanted to sell it. Now we just need to get in touch with them, get into their world, introduce us to them, let them begin to know, like, and trust us, and then find out if they have any interest of selling. And that's a good way of what I talk about with growing a database. Now, the third thing I want to talk about when it comes to expireds, if you're going to claim a market area, and this is going to be your market area, and again, you got to look at it as if you're like your own gang. You're a gang member, and that anyone else doing anything in your land is like they're poaching off your land. But if you're going to do that, you can't look at expireds and for sale by owner as their only source, because this is your area. You need to know everything that's going on. And if you're previewing properties and you're getting to know the market and you're running into sellers and you're having the conversations, chances are there will be a time that you've either walked by the property, previewed the property, showed the property, by the time something became an expired. So what you're really doing is you're looking at these properties that are active on the market. Your job is to know everything about the market, but also want to make sure that you're positioning yourself that people know you already if in fact it comes expired. So I did this well. This was a strategy that I had well before my digital strategy came into play. I would just preview property. And what I found is that when I would preview property, at least 1/3 of one of the homeowners was at home. So I got to have an engagement with one of the homeowners. I got to share my card. I got to joke around with them. My jokes don't change. They're all still the same ones I use. But what will happen is if they expire, because they had that face-to-face, they remember you. They have a conversation with you. Look, they may be getting 24 calls by 9 a.m. on one day, but you're the only one that they remember that they actually showed the property that they know works in the market area. So a lot of the things that you need to do as expires is be strategic. You know, in Orange County, typically you're not seeing listing agreements exceeding 3 months. So if a new one comes onto the market, if it hasn't sold in a month, it's overpriced. And then you just watch that. Go preview the property. You know, go strategically make sure that you can be seen. And then if in fact that expires, then it can come up. Gino, that would work well with you as well.